Hey everybody, today I figured I would do a part one video on Nick Reinhardt's beautiful Chevy 2 Nova 67. He brought us this car to wire it up, get it all fired up. This is a drag and drive car. This car's gorgeous. He's done a fantastic job building this thing. So, right now we have a bunch of it disassembled, seat out of it, this side of the center console, tunnel area, front half of the tunnel out. So we've been on this thing for about a week and some change, and we're starting to get close. So I figured I would make a video kind of showing what goes into this. So wiring a car of this caliber to do all the things that it wants to do and have an end result that looks and functions perfectly. So like I said, he's done a fantastic job building this car. It's gorgeous. Him and some buddies did the absolute majority of this work. I believe what he told me was the only thing he didn't really build was the transmission. So, a little overview. I mean, even down to the perfect door panels, everything on it. It's gorgeous. So, under the hood is a twin turbo big block Chevrolet. Turbos are back there. And we've got two sets of injectors, a set of AFIS injectors for methanol, and a set of Holley injectors for pump gas. He plumbed everything, I believe did the majority of the fabrication, him and some buddies. They've done a beautiful job on this thing. Big radiator, Spall brushless fan, using one of our alternators that we use with the P-Motive full spectrum power batteries. Bunch of Rife sensors on this thing. So there's some Rife sensor blocks there and there. Rife high intake air temp back there. Just fit and finish on it's gorgeous. I mean, I really, really, really like this car. So this is definitely in like a top three for me. Like I love it. So what I want to show y'all is what goes into wiring something like this. So let's talk about the electronics that are in this car. We've got an EGT module right here on the door bar. And then we have an injector driver module right here. So this is for the big set of AFIS injectors for the second set of injectors, right? And then on the inside, we've got a raceback smart wire right here. Holley high flow boost control solenoids, an MSD Pro 600, and then there's the Dominator. Okay. So there's a little tight quarters in here. Just because for real estate for electronics. Not bad, but it is a little bit tight. So there is a solid state relay mounted right there. And then there's also a leash 70 amp relay mounted right here. So because this car is a drag and drive car, it's got a lot of stuff going on in it. The smart wire has 30 outputs, and we wound up using them all before we ever even got into power and injectors, which is fine. So we used that 70 amp relay to power the 16 injectors. And we had to put a switch bus module right here, which is an expansion module for the smart wire for inputs. So what we're doing is there's a keypad right here for the smart wire. It's on the shifter. Here's his kill switch. What we're doing is, as far as that switch module goes, is all the like actual physical switches in the car. So there's a neutral safety switch here. There's gonna be a line lock button on the shifter. Then there's through here, we've got a headlight switch, like a factory style headlight switch that we're gonna put in here in this carbon, so that he can pull it on, you know, a marker, headlights. We're going to mount a factory style high beam floor switch over there behind the pedal, or to the left of the brake pedal. And then he's got turn signals on a factory style column over there. We've got door jam switches. So when you open the doors, it'll pop on the factory dome light. Then we'll also have an additional switch on that keypad to turn on aftermarket dome lights, right, or work lights, whatever you want to call them. So we've got a bunch of lights that are going to go up underneath the hood, so it's easier for him to change spark plugs. some lighting that goes up underneath of the rear of the car to access shock, so if you need to make a shock change or whatever. And then another dome light up across that dash bar that's right there, so that if he's got to service the transmission, he can turn that on. If he's got to access anything at the footwell, so it's nice and bright for him. So this thing is a lockup transmission. So it's got an internal, external lockup solenoid, and then it has an internal dump valve and an external dump valve. So you wind up using up a lot of outputs, or let's just call them relays for people that, so it's easier for everybody to understand. If you think about it, that smart wire has 30 relays in it in essence, right? So you wind up using a lot of outputs of the smart wire and a lot of outputs of the Dominator. So that's why we use that 70 amp relay to power injectors, because otherwise we would have wound up using, probably 3 of the 20 amp outputs to power the injectors. So it frees up 3 outputs for us so that we can use them for other devices. So, you've got a cooling fan up front, then you got a trans fan back here in the back of the car. There's high current stuff all over this car just because of its function, right? These drag and drive cars, they have a lot going into them. So now you get the gist of the car. The car is top-notch gorgeous. Obviously the footballs come out. Those are the inlets for the turbos. So you obviously take the footballs out. There you go. See the turbos. So it's got a dual fuel system. So there's a mechanical pump underneath of the car, which is fed from this tank. And then there's two Walbro pumps, like 2 Walbro 450 pumps in here for pump gas, right? So there's that full spectrum power battery, and then 2 contactors, 2 of our contactors. So, so the alternator is completely segregated from everything else. So he did awesome. Put chassis grounds here on the cage. He did chassis grounds all over the cage, which is smart. So anyway, what goes into wiring a car like this? So we have got, first off, everybody loves these things, bulkheads, right? And that's what today's job is today. Today's job is to finish up the harness that I'm about to show you. So what we opted to do with this thing is he wanted this to be able to come apart easily, to work on easily if he ever had to disassemble easily and to reassemble easily, which is usually the ultimate goal with any car. So we wanted to build him a completely sealed harness that he didn't have to worry about, that he can disassemble easily without having any issues. So this is our bulkhead for the engine. Now, we get requests a lot to build harnesses with bulkhead connectors in them, and I'm here to tell you that if you want us to do it, that's fine. If you want to try to do it yourself, that's fine as well. But these may seem like they're just easy to do, or, oh, hey, all I gotta do is cut my harness in half and there we go. We just pin it on either side. It's somewhat true, but if you want it to actually function properly, understand that this is not a 1 hour job. This isn't add an hour to the job and then we're done, okay? So we're happy to build you engine harnesses, or I hope you guys try to build your own engine harness or whatever with bulkhead connectors. But I made another video. They're not all the same. This is a 55 pin, all size 20 contacts. Each contact is good for 7.5 amp. You have to do some math. You have to do some figuring before you just go and buy a bulkhead connector and hope that it's gonna work out well. These are the back shells for the bulkhead connectors. So if you look, there's threads here, there, and these thread on like this, and then lock down, and it seals it up. And then you use this shrink boot here. These are 90-degree shrink boots. They go over top of it like this, they shrink, and then they seal up against the harness. So then we use nut plates here with hardware, so that this nut plate, all that you see coming through the firewall is this flange is back behind the firewall, and then the nut plate sits behind that flange, and then you just have 4 little stainless bolts right through there that hold that to the firewall. And then this is your quick disconnect on the firewall side for the engine. These bulkheads, we have a passenger side and a driver side bulkhead. They are keyed the same, but their orientation is flipped. So if you notice, there's sockets on this one, and then there's pins on this one, so you can't mix them up, right? So if he disassembled the entire car, all this stuff is labeled and cut the length and whatnot, but if he disassembled the entire car, he would never be able to try to plug in the passenger bulkhead into the driver's side, or the driver's side into the passenger side, vice versa. So these are 41 pin. These are gonna have our O2 sensors in it, and all the auxiliary stuff like your water pump and your fan and all that kind of, the triggers for the fans, all that kind of stuff. So here we have it. That's our auxiliary bulkheads for the front. And then these are our CDI bulkheads. So the coils are in a, they're down low on the frame rail, and they are going to be able to be removed. Like you pull the whole coil rack off. So you take the bar clamp mount off, and you can take all 4 coils off, you know, one quick, there we go, coils are out. So whole bunch of bulkheads. People love them. This is the harness. So we've gotten pretty far with this thing so far. So here's a mock-up ECU. Rob Sitton made this one for us. Look, he's even put our name in it. Pretty sweet. Even labeled each connector. So because of this thing's location, I wanted to make sure that we had a harness that was sealed, and that if somebody went in there with muddy feet or something, it wasn't going to damage anything. So we opted to use back shells on all the connectors, and then these rubber boots. So we've done plenty of them with shrink boots, and they come out great and whatnot. But these rubber boots work out pretty good because you can actually access your harness. It's too hard to do with one hand, but you can actually access all of your connections here without having to cut open a boot. So this is nice so that you can actually, you know, access this stuff if you ever need to. So we opted to use rubber boots instead of shrink boots. The shrink boots that we would normally use are very similar, just a little bit smaller. Actually, it's these right here. A shrink boot would be, you'd shrink this thing up, put a little epoxy in it, and it would shrink around this back shell right here. So this is the back shell for the connector. So we used rubber boots. It's all sealed. It's nice that they make them for this. These are 70-degree boots. If you use 90s, they run into each other. 70-degree boots lay out pretty dang good. And obviously, don't judge us here. That's got to be tucked just a little bit. So, still in the process of finishing off the engine harness. That's this. Here is the smart wire connection. So that's sealed as well. We wanted to seal up everything just because when you do these drag and drive events, sometimes it's raining, and guess what? That's an old car. It probably doesn't seal up too well, right? So we wanted to make sure everything was pretty much waterproof, right? So if he wanted to, he could pressure wash the inside of the thing and it won't matter. Here's this connection for the trans brake solid state relay. So the way we did this one is everything is integrated all into one loom, right? So people will message us or call us and say, hey, I want you to build me, disregard that, it's just choked back so that we can terminate, that's one of the bulkheads. People contact us and say, hey, I want you to build me a custom harness. Okay, so that sounds great in theory, but you have to be realistic with your expectations. To understand, like this here, this is just stuff behind the dash, right? So it comes up and then it has a breakout. And then all of these are to a certain length, so they reach certain devices in the car, right? So like this is where the VPS will be up on the dash bar. Then like here, this is for the GPS. This is for the rugged radios. This is for your USB 12 volt chargers. And then here you have another breakout here where this is to the column, and this is to a length, right? So this is to plug into the turn signal switches and whatnot and hazard and everything that's on the column. And then this is to a certain length to the dash. Then this is to a certain length for the steering wheel buttons, right? This is to a certain length for the door switches. All this stuff is measured out repeatedly. So if you want us to build an engine harness, no problem. You get us a measurement from here to the bulkhead. I'm gonna make a separate video on just how to do that because I'm building a spreadsheet so you guys can order up custom engine harnesses and we'll build them to you to suit. But what I'm getting at is that there is a tremendous amount of time and effort into getting all of those measurements correct. So if you look, everything's in here. Like this is the high beam switch, right? There. labeled high beam switch, right? This, it doesn't have a flex fuel sensor on it, but we wired it for flex just in case he wants to add it. This is for the factory dome light, but everything's got a certain length and a certain breakout point so it looks right in the car. Again, with engine harnesses, it's not as difficult, but for chassis stuff, it takes quite a bit of time. We like to do sub harnesses on stuff, right? So this is for his CO2 bottle. So we're putting a automatic shutoff valve on a CO2 bottle so that he doesn't have to worry about turning the bottle on and off. He can just leave it on all the time, and then it'll arm through the smart wire. But it's also going to have CO2 bottle pressure. So instead of having two cumbersome areas to disconnect, it'll have one easy plug that if you wanted to remove the CO2 bottle, you remove it complete. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. You put it on the bench or put it on your mini trailer or whatever, service it, refill it, and then slap it back in, you're done, right? We have shocks here, transmission cooler fan, more shocks, and then we've got some spares, right? So because we had a couple of outputs left, we filled the smart wire and we filled the denominator. But because we had some excess, I said, hey, let's make sure we have some spare stuff for him. So he's got a spare behind the dash, and he's got a spare in the trunk, and then there's a spare up underneath the hood, just in case he wanted a 10 amp output to power something. So for reference, we have a bunch of time into this, right? It's a good bit of time wrapped up into this whole deal. Here's some dome lights. This is our integration to the main engine harness, so the main engine harness can be removed. All this stuff is getting booted as well. So like this right here is our EGT module, right? Well, that has another rubber boot on it, so you have to plan ahead for all this stuff. This is the injector driver module, so we have to tie injectors into this, and then that has to be tied into this. So there's a lot of planning that goes into it. That's why we typically always recommend people to just bring us the car and let us wire it, as opposed to somebody contacting us and say, hey, I want you to build me a harness that can run the whole car and do everything, in my turn signals and my headlights and my taillights, and I want all my EFI stuff, and I want the engine to run, and I got turbos here, and I got fans there, and I got all this stuff. It's a lot more difficult than it looks to have a finished product that you're happy with going off of your measurements. So engine harness is one thing, because it's literally just these two connectors right here. But you start getting into chassis stuff, and now you're getting into a lot of different things, right? So anyway, just wanted to show y'all. We should have this thing wrapped up here, hopefully by the end of next week, and we'll have it fired off. We'll do some more videos on it. And I'll do another video when it comes to the other side of these bulkheads, kind of how you build them, right? So like how we terminate and build these things, and you know, maybe help some of you guys out. So anyway, Nick's Nova is awesome. Till we see you again. See ya.